Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we got a nice, exciting live stream, and we're going to be discussing the Donald Trump versus Big Eva. And then we had a nice gift wrap of a story just kind of came into our laps here with the thing that's going on with JD Vance and him educating the entire population on Ordo Amoris. So this is just a nice confluence of events for a nice live stream tonight. Pretty excited to talk about the stories because there's a few different stories, but the general theme is that the Trump administration is fighting Big Eva and their influence on Christianity. And this is a massive W. This is a nice headwind to have at our backs right now. It's like we're getting an airstrike on Big Eva and spiritual warfare. So I'm absolutely excited about these developments, and we're going to discuss some of them tonight because we didn't do videos on this this week at all. So we're going to dive into this tonight. So, Anthony, how are you doing?
All is well. I'm ready to just dive into this week's worth of immigration-related stories. Which again, I remember in the year-end live stream, warning about, hey, this is the fight that's going to be happening all 2025 is immigration. You're going to see Big Eva pull out all the stops to undermine mass deportations, undermine the anti-immigration agenda that the American people overwhelmingly supported in the election, and you're seeing that. And just to rub some more salt in the wounds of a lot of the naysayers, you also saw a lot of the most pro-life legislation or the most pro-life administrative action happen in the entirety of the pro-life movement happened within the past week.
Which one are you referring to specifically?
I mean, you're seeing a lot of the executive orders that on the Hyde Amendment or halting abortion funding. Obviously, you're seeing the transgender medicine get
now. Was that
down.
also just on Medicaid or Medicare? Was he just clamping down on that stuff, or was
I think
it?
he did citing the Hyde Amendment. So yeah, I assume that's
So I do wonder because the federal government does pay for abortions via advanced premium tax credits and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I'm not quite sure, but
if a plan covers abortion, the only real consequences that you at a minimum have to pay $1 for every person on the plan. Whereas if it doesn't, you could actually get a cheaper healthcare plan because your APTC could exceed the premium amounts. I'm getting very technical, but there's 15, 20, 25 million Americans that know what I'm talking about, I think, but I don't know how many of them are watching the stream. And, I used to work in healthcare IT, so I could kind of tell you a lot of nerdy things about healthcare. But when presidents talk about defunding abortion or the Hyde Amendment is useless because the government pays the premiums for people on plans that cover abortion. So the Hyde Amendment's functionally useless. And hopefully the transgender thing was like on the practice itself and not just trying to cut off federal funds to it.
And RFK also, despite Mike Pence's resistance, he's also vowed to end the embryonic research. I think he's talked about that, which Francis Collins was doing. So a lot of victories just in the past week on multiple fronts. And a lot of the naysayers, especially, whether they're in the abolitionist camp or even a lot of the Big Eva types, they're either silent on this or they're counter signaling hard, especially on the immigration stuff. And that's kind of the big battle that's happened all this past week is the immigration stuff.
So I want to dive into that, but I think I want to talk about the JD Vance stuff first.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much
that's the really hot topic going on right
now.
But
that's the issue at hand of the immigration stuff as well.
Right, it's the same issue, and this is where it has blown up recently. Is there's a video of JD Vance explaining Ordo Amoris, and it is beautiful. And
ironically,
he's applying it to how to be a president.
On Hannity, of all shows, like
Yeah.
to the most boomer of boomer audience.
Yeah, it's not exactly an audience that's very comfortable with the concept, especially since, support Israel and that the nonsense that Hannity's kind of known for.
Actually, like
He is a shill's shill.
giving your children an inheritance.
Is he actually like one of those people that doesn't believe in doing that?
No, but that's just a joke at the boomer generation.
Okay. Well, there's the Bible has a lot
The
to say about
average Fox News viewer generation, of course.
and the Bible has a lot to say about like denying your children inheritance because you think that they should earn it. Like there's no biblical justification for that. So anyway, let's get into the clip. I got it loaded here.
But there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first. In the same way that the British prime minister should care about Brits and the French should care about the French, we have an American president who cares primarily about Americans, and that's a very welcome change.
What is President Xi doing? What is Vladimir Putin
He's looking
doing?
after the Chinese. Putin is looking after the Russians. They're entitled to do that. Thank God we now have an American president.
And that is a refreshing change, especially since we had, Joe Biden wasn't looking out for, I don't think he was looking out for the citizens of a foreign country, but he certainly wasn't looking out for
he was
Americans.
Functionally an accelerationist placeholder. His entire administration was designed to collapse America and flood it with third worlders and basically overwhelm us with so many foreigners, and that you can complete the whole so-called Great Replacement.
Yeah, I mean, crash the economy,
and squeeze the middle class. His entire administration was designed to do that, along with the whole COVID regime. So, and the fact that he brings up like Putin and Xi in that, because if you look at China, they have a lot of the same issues that we're having. They just don't have it with diversity. Like they have the population collapse, they have the feminism issue, they have obviously a gender imbalance from one child that they have to rectify in the future. So the idea that if America can really steer the ship and course correct, we could really excel into this century versus China, which might even implode under its own weight. But a lot of everyone's crashing. It's just can America steer the ship and course correct? And JD Vance actually wants to do that, and it seems like he actually understands what it would take to do that.
Yeah, and there are some naysayers that say, hey, if we actually do mass deportations, our population is going to collapse. But in reality, any policy that help the middle class will help the birth rates in the United States. That's just a fact. If you can help alleviate the housing crisis, if you can help alleviate the job market, if you can do these types of things, you will have a higher birth rate. Yeah, I do think that is true.
Stability and crime. I mean, if you just look at what someone like Viktor Orban has done in Hungary, I mean, a lot of his improvements in birth rates actually would come after or before he implemented more natalist tax policy. So again, a lot of stability, preserving Hungary from a lot of the migrants that other European countries are succumbing to. So when you're flooding their country with mass immigration, you're actually putting a headwind against improving birth rates.
Right, and you're giving that country or the border, that economic zone, really, you're giving them a stopgap measure to fixing their population problems. So, because one thing that's universally true about population is that people in cities have fewer kids than people in the rurals. That is universally and historically true. That is a trend that exists.
Well, another aspect is you're actually like if you stress out a population, the population will also collapse. And that's kind of what's happened now, whereas, everyone's kind of running the rat race. Can't keep, and again, this goes back to the economic factors of housing, jobs, the fact that you need to work 40 hours a week, and, you're still like struggling to maintain yourself. And of course, the pressures of the dating market. So again, that's all those things are not conducive to population growth. And immigration is just a compounding factor.
But there's a lot of reaction to this tweet. I thought what JD Vance said was just accurate. Like, he's the vice president of the United States, probably going to be the next president of the United States if we want to be real. And I think he knows his shot. It's kind of interesting to be so young to become president, as I think he will be.
I mean, he's a modern JFK.
I mean, what do you like? Obama was on the younger side. It's like, what do you do after you become president? Like, there's no really going up from that. But Obama's a billionaire now and stuff like that. I won't get into the rumors with him and other people, but he's making a lot of money on the Netflix side of things and stuff like that. So, like, what is the up from being president of the United States? Like, Donald Trump can just retire happily, probably, and he wasn't able to do that after 2020, but he's able to do that after 2028, and I hope he does live that long for sure. So let's dive into some of the Big Eva reaction to this, because it has been insane, the pushback that JD Vance is getting. He would go on to post something on Ordo Amoris. He would basically spell it out for everyone, for all the midwits out there. I guess he would spell it out. So I'm going to pull that up. So here we go. So he says, just Google Ordo Amoris. Aside from that, the idea that there isn't a hierarchy of obligations violates basic common sense. Does Rory, referring to Rory Stewart, who's an academic over in the UK, I think, and I'm not shocked that he does not have good theology. When you have Yale in your bio. So does Rory really think that his moral duties to his own children are the same as his duties to a stranger who lives 1,000 miles away? Does anyone? So basically, Rory Stewart was saying in John 15, less Christian, more pagan, tribal. We should start worrying when politicians become theologians, assume to speak for Jesus, and tell us which order to love. So he's basically saying, how dare JD Vance try to use faith in the political realm. But what he's saying is just standard. And he says, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The problem with Rory and people like him, this is JD Vance saying this, and it's just hilarious, is that he has an IQ of 110 and thinks he has an IQ of 130. This false arrogance drives so much of the elite failures over the last 40 years. So he's kind of going into like the horseshoe theory of practical intelligence as well as elite theory. And also, so he's basically calling him a midwit and just saying, and talking about the managerial class. So he's getting into that stuff as well. So JD Vance is very well read on dissident right. Or
yes, he's the type of person.
Place.
He's the type of person that reads our tweets, reads our people's Substacks. He reads our materials. He follows us. He probably has a burner account or two. Similar to Barron Trump. Like he's probably well connected with what the online right is saying.
So that was one take on that, and there's a lot more. I'll keep pulling them up, but it's just fascinating just watching this unfold, that he has educated an entire online space about Ordo Amoris. And this is another thing that I posted, so I'll share this as well. And this graphic just explains so much about the difference between liberals and non-liberals. It uses the word conservatives, but this is a heat map. This is the heat map study of where people place their highest priorities in social relationships. And what it shows is that liberals view inanimate objects with even more reverence and more affection than they would view their close family and even their friends. So the outer ring of the circle is all natural things in the universe, including inert entities such as rocks. And then the outmost ring is all things in existence. So number 14 is kind of where it's hottest, which is all living things in the universe, including plants and trees. So that's your environmentalism. And that kind of shows the folly of environmentalism. Like I believe in conservationism because that's different, but environmentalism believes that mankind exists for the environment, not the environment for mankind. And you see that what is more natural, which is represented by the conservatives, is that they have the highest amount of affection for their immediate family, for extended family and closest friends, and then all of friends, including distant ones. So those would be the 4 highest on the heat map for the conservatives, whereas, rocks on the left.
I mean,
So,
it has to do with abstractions.
right. And there's a quote from Fyodor Dostoevsky basically saying to love all humanity in abstraction is to love yourself. It is somewhat how the quote goes. And that's what's going on here. There is no actual love here in the liberalism side. It's, first of all, I think it's hatred of the family, of even your friends, and it's just love of self. These are abstractions on this far end. So there's no real love. And this is what's being depicted pretty much. So this graphic shows up time and time again, and there is no limit on its usefulness because it describes so many different issues.
Yeah, I mean, you care more about what's happening in foreign country than you do in America. You care more about the foreigner in America than you do about your American neighbors. Especially, again, keep in mind, we just had a hurricane, in North
We just had
Carolina,
wildfires in California.
yeah.
Or
So,
sorry, not wild, but we had major fires in California.
So, we had 2 major disasters that just happened. And, who do people, and then you see, oh, they care more about, Ukraine, Israel, foreigners coming into the country, whether refugees, H-1Bs, or asylees. So and just see what the left says. Or again, they care more about the immigrant being deported than they do about Lake and Riley.
Yeah. And here's another thing. The Gospel Coalition never wrote a thing on Lake and Riley. You know how many things they wrote on a bunch of other liberal pet issues, but never anything about Lake and Riley. So this is from Thabiti Anyabwile, formerly known as Ron Burns. And just a story of this pastor.
Did he really change his name for Roots? I know I was seeing that today.
You did not know that?
Apparently not. So he's a Roots movement guy?
I don't know. Well, I don't really want to know, but his background is he came up out of Mark Dever's organization, I think. So this guy has been in Big Eva for about a decade. He's been operating. He has some bylines in the Gospel Coalition. I think, I could be wrong, he might have been the guy who slandered Kyle Rittenhouse. I could be wrong about that, but I mean, he could have also been a guy who slandered Kyle Rittenhouse, because there's a lot of those in Big Eva. So
no, he most certainly probably slandered Derek Chauvin.
Oh, for sure. So this guy's a hardcore Black Lives Matter guy, and he's definitely the type that deconstructed over years, because he used to say some pretty based things back in the day, but he came up in the Mark Dever organization, which was just a pipeline for false teachers. Just was. So he says this may be old school, but it's not a very Christian concept. He's describing natural affection, a fleshly notion of love, describing self-love over a wider area. He's not describing Christian or supernatural love. And Yeah, I just thought that was really dumb.
And everyone was going after this one because it's such low hanging fruit.
I mean, I'll let you take the first crack at it.
Yeah, I mean, my response is that, you know, if you want to translate his response, it's Ordo Amoris is bad because it justifies the notion of white people collectivizing under the principle of ordered affections, which naturally would include race and ethnicity. And again, these people have no problem with Black people collectivizing, with Jewish people collectivizing, Hispanics collectivizing, with all like international people, like immigrants collectivizing for their own interests. They only have a problem when it's one group of people because, you know, that's the predominant group in America. That's the predominant, ethnicity in America that's either at, above, or just slightly under majority. And again, if white consciousness grows in America, that could pretty much resolve a lot of the political problems in America that,
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
minorities, especially Black people, are perpetuating at every single election.
Do you think
You
that
know,
Hispanics will become super based?
well, there is the notion that Hispanics will increasingly identify with white people as they assimilate, and that's more seen in like Texas than it would be in California. But that's part of the assimilation process. That's why the whole term white Hispanic is a thing. Is because it deals with like Hispanics that are kind of like identifying with white people.
I
But
always
yeah,
thought it was because the government does not consider Hispanic a race.
I mean, it's on the forms, but
No, it's on the forms as an ethnicity.
yeah.
It's not on the government creates a different category of ethnicity and race. It's really stupid.
But yeah, they don't want anything that suggests or promotes white people collectivizing. It's just an extension of their anti-white racism. That's just, it's manifesting on this Ordo Amoris thing. But that's the objection to Stephen Wolf 14 words, or it's 14 words or
Yeah, it's
11.
11
But
words.
that's the objection. No, you can't say white people are the lone bulwark because, you're saying that the white, it's just them. Well, it is. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, don't
and
be
the
offended because the word bulwark
yeah,
doesn't mean it's the only.
it's
The bulwark's not the only thing on the battlefield, you know?
yeah. I mean, but at the same time, the flip side is that, we're Black people in relative to the white evangelicals. They're literally fighting on the opposite team.
Uh, John Harris has been basically stat posting for the last week, and he's basically talking about how he's trying to basically promote how evangelicals are more conservative than everything else. And this is actually how you do apologetics, in my opinion. Like Stephen Wolf is doing apologetics really well by saying, hey, you can't really be based and Catholic because you're tied to Vatican II. He's basically making arguments like that. And then John Harris is pointing out, yeah, Eastern Orthodox people are far more accepting of homosexuality, and stuff like that. And even Hispanic Protestants are more based than Hispanic Catholics. So he's doing a really good apologetic here on for Protestantism. And it's just, you love to see that, but it shows up. So at the end of the day, it's not just about, oh, just be in the church, because certain churches are more conducive to protecting American values than others. So I don't think the Eastern Orthodox Church is gonna
Yeah, I
save
mean,
America,
there are a lot
because
of
it wouldn't be America.
there are a lot of based ortho bros out there. I've met one or two, but at the end of the day, they're like, Trump would say on immigration, they're not sending their best. Well, when it comes to the internet, the ortho bros are sending their best. Like,
So
Eastern Orthodox, they send their best to the internet to do a lot of apologetics.
they really do.
And represent their brand, but that's their best.
I mean, their best also includes Charles Haywood, and he's pretty based. But here we go with a new struggle session drop from Joel Berry of Babylon Bee. And can I just say, Babylon Bee has been absolutely cringe lately. Like, they are boomer simping, and it's just embarrassing to watch. They wrote an article yesterday. I wrote an article on this today about how they were simping Chrissy Nome, who's 54 years old. and she's had so much work done to her face. So she's actually pretty ugly to me. And they're like treating her like she's so attractive that young dudes would want to dress up as Mexicans to get detained by her. Like, are you such boomers that you can't even like? Do you know how many comments that I saw made like way better jokes on the same subject than her? It was like that new White House press secretary. Oh, young guys registering for
Press
media credentials,
passes.
press passes in order to talk to her. Like that. That's
I mean,
actually a joke.
especially when you had the New Yorker magazine, where it's just like,
Or
whoa,
the other one is
where can I go to meet the women in that picture? Like,
Chrissy Nome can't detain a legal immigrant after breaking a nail. That's a much better joke.
yeah, the immigration dog has to get checked. The porterhound like cocaine dog has to get put down by Christy Nome.
Okay, so Romans 8 Shaman says Jay Dyer, who is the worst. So, but there is a sense.
I said they
even
send
if
their
we
best.
make an exception,
their best. Now, I'm not saying everyone on the internet's their best, but they do send their best.
Okay, good clarification, because that was some solid pushback if you're not a Jay Dyer fan. I'm not overly familiar.
I'm not
with him.
familiar with
There's
him
also
at
the
all.
Andrew Wilson guy who's just kind of like an emotional debate
Yeah.
bro. So he's
got some
orthodox as well.
They got bad cringe as well, but
so this is the latest, and they also did the same thing with Tulsi Gabbard. It's like, and instead that one was the writing staff of the Babylon Bee can't pay attention when Tulsi Gabbard's speaking. I was like, are you kidding me? You guys are simping over hot communist?
I didn't know Zach Wilson was writing for the Babylon Bee. And for those that don't know, he's the former quarterback of the New York Jets that, allegedly had, fornication with his friend's mother. And he went to BYU.
Yep. Fun facts. So this is Joel Berry saying a physically and spiritually healthy person has a natural affection for their immediate family and countrymen above foreign nations. That's a good thing. And that being said, Joel Berry's nation is clearly Israel. Some on the dissident right / woke right / racist right, whatever you want to call them, have taken this self-evident truth to justify racial chauvinism, racial consciousness, racial identitarianism, and even worse, racial preference as a matter of public policy. They're sneaking in a logical fallacy here. It's a subversive sleight of hand, and they're hoping good, clear thinking people don't notice. So does this guy know what nationality means?
Well, I mean, again, everything I just said about the Weeby and a Weeble applies to Joel Berry, except Joel Berry's trying to co-opt the term to mean what it doesn't actually mean, or to exclude the category of race and nation, versus Anna Weeble, who just outright denies it. So he's just being more subversive.
And then he's trying to
he's kind of like being the neocon position versus the outright liberal position.
He's trying to use the heat map thing, which he should have just copied my image, but actually I wasn't up this morning at that early. So the woke right / racist white will try to claim this heat map, which is the one I showed earlier. The heat map doesn't belong to them. They're the ones suggesting that you should have more natural affection for a white person on the other side of the country than your black neighbor. There's still the picture on the right, just a different flavor. And it's like, no, not even.
No, let's actually play that out.
Okay.
So again, live in Maryland. A lot of people, where do a lot of white people live? Not in the cities. Why don't they live in the cities? Why did white flight happen? Because, certain people went into the neighborhood. The Civil Rights Act was passed. You got rid of a lot of the segregation laws, and all of a sudden the cities start going to crap. So the white people leave the cities to form their own communities to be with their own people. And, a lot of people that will say, we're moving to this neighborhood for better schools, but we all know that better schools does, generally mean whiter schools. Like, if we're just being honest, that's what it means. And, I forget who said it, but it was like the last 60 years or whatever has been white people moving 5 miles further from the consequences of the Civil Rights Act. So yeah, you can say, like Joel Berry can say you should have more affection for your nearby black neighbor, but a lot of white people had to move away from like the Black community because of the problems that they brought to the community.
And
so thus their affections for people in, let's say, North Carolina might supersede their affections for the people in Baltimore, even though they live in Maryland.
yeah, and even living in Maryland's actually pretty interesting because Maryland is one of the least white states in the country.
I mean, we're like, I think at least a third.
We might be the second or third least white state in the country. And again, I say these things, and I have no animosity towards the Black people that are in my neighborhood, and because I know they're there. I'm not sure what houses they live in or whatever, because I don't follow people at home, and I'm not overly social with my neighbors unless they're at the neighborhood park and all. But it doesn't really. What he's saying is setting up a false dichotomy because people can think in categories. People can think, hey, there's political blocks. And then people can think, hey, I have these people in my community and, we're friends. And even though I'm like super racist online or whatever, I'm just being hypothetical. We'll
even though you're in some spicy group chats.
Yeah, you still have like a beer with your Black neighbor or whatever. Like that's a normal thing. And there's nothing wrong with that because, again, there's no actual hatred here. There's just a recognition that, hey, and I don't even think it affects the heat map at all. I'll just be real. Because at the end of the day, let's just say Heritage America is one ethnic group, right? And then we can say through ethnogenesis, and then Black Americans would be another.
And again,
these two ethnic groups would comprise, for the most part, America. They would comprise what it means to be an American. And I don't want to combine the two because I don't think Black people would assent to being
Black people view themselves
in the white.
They view themselves
American
as
thing.
a unique people.
Yeah,
white people should be allowed to do the same. But again, Joel Berry doesn't want white people to view themselves as a collective because then they would act in a collective interest, and he doesn't want that.
Yeah, I have no problem with Black Americans viewing themselves as a community. I don't mind them saying, talking about the issues in the Black community. I actually like Jason Whitlock a lot because he talks about issues in the Black community. And I like Shamika Michelle a lot too because she talks about issues in the Black community as well. She hates fat people a lot.
But yeah,
it's very funny to me.
But again, you can't address those problems by saying we're all individuals and you gotta pick yourself up by your bootstrap and individualism. You have to address the problems as collectives. Which again, that's the prophets in Scripture. How did they address Israel as a collective? So the idea that you can't address communities as a collective, I mean, in their case, they're really just denying that a community exists, unless you say that everyone is part of one community, even though there's clear distinctives.
Yeah, I mean, there's subsets, but there's subsets of like white Americans, but I think that's less of the case now because of we've become more transient. So the distinctions between Yankees and Southerners and all these other different white camps, I think is going to mend.
So again, so I mean, if you don't want to watch the Dave Green, Neil Shenvi sit down, then I mean, I wrote an article on it that would save you the time. And yeah, that's a lot of what Dave Green talks about is that, like, after the Civil War, there's more of a conscious effort to homogenize white people in America. And that's, that a lot of that is achieved through public education. Obviously, you have like a regime apparatus. Of course, there were world wars that were fought. So white people over time did homogenize as one group. Any whites, Dave Green, who's like a child of Hungarian immigrants, can talk about how he can identify with the Pilgrims of Plymouth Rock, even though his family was, not, they immigrated after like the 50s.
How was he able to do that though? Because of the standardization of
the homogenization.
Okay.
So he's able to, and again, when you grow up in America, I guess
Now is he Catholic or Protestant?
He is a Catholic, so
okay.
Again, there's some great papists out there, but he is able to say that, hey, he as a child he could identify with the Pilgrims of Plymouth Rock, and he doesn't necessarily think that And again,
can Neil Shenvi identify with that?
I don't know, but Neil Shenvi, I mean, his thing is he's very idealistic, and that is just unrealistic.
Yeah, and there's a Stephen Wolf post about that, which I don't have on standby, but I mean, people like Joel Berry just think are bad actors in general. He's a sellout, and
Because
apparently he's
remember,
also a simp. Like the dude's got porn brain or something.
or maybe I mean, again, Tulsi. I mean, in his defense, Tulsi Gabbard is only.
Well,
she's only
the Christy
around.
Nome thing is what I was
Oh,
basing this
well.
off of. Like that's gross, man. Like plastic surgery and Botox, just that's ugly. There's no real excuse for it. So let me find the Neil Shenby post that everyone's dunking on, because there's never a bad reason to dunk on Neil Shenby, who's always got to repost himself. So I was really able to find this.
And you would think after getting absolutely waxed by Dave Green, he would just go back into his hole and just be quiet, because he has nothing, absolutely nothing to present.
Yeah, he has nothing to add.
He doesn't have an argument.
And let me just read his tweet. It is not anti-Christian to recognize a hierarchy of loves. I should love my own wife over other people's wives. What is anti-Christian is appealing to a hierarchy of love to excuse yourself from loving your neighbor. And who is my neighbor? Oh boy, do I have a story for you.
Again, we're about to abuse the Good Samaritan parable, which again, the lesson in the Good Samaritan is not, I'm going to love my neighbor who's a foreigner by making him a burden to every other person who is my neighbor. No, the Good Samaritan helped his neighbor to the benefit of his other neighbors. He vowed to pay the bill
if it exceeded what
he paid.
So he actually, I don't want to say he stimulated the economy, but he wasn't a burden. He didn't burden other people with his.
Say, here's this refugee I'm helping. He's your problem now. I don't care if you don't have food for it. I don't care if you don't have the denarii to take care of him. He's your problem. I got to go on my journey. I helped him.
And the other thing is proximity is the point of the story. Like who is your neighbor? It's the people around you, the people that you're in proximity to. All of the people, like, because Jesus ends the story by asking which one of these people was the good neighbor, and the guy says the Samaritan, despite the fact that a Jew and then a Pharisee, I believe, walked by him, or is okay. So someone who is religiously educated, they both passed on him because they were bad neighbors. They were not ordinarily neighbors with him. This is not a story about the starving child in Africa is my neighbor because of abstract principles. That's not what the Good Samaritan is about. And when we make it about abstract principles, we actually end up loving no one but ourselves. So,
and in fact, I mean, since it was a Jew that was the guy that needed aid, the fact that they didn't help their own person, like a member of their own people, is a condemnation on them versus the Samaritan who did help them. So again, the idea that your ordered loves and ordered affections don't include nation is actually disproven by the point, because the fact that they're all three people were Jews, except for the Samaritan, would imply that the Jews failed their duty to their neighbor, to their own Jew.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up as well. So that is the JD Vance just absolutely dropping it on the Ordo Amoris, and people are going to be looking that up and learning better theology than what you can expect from Big Eva.
Well,
Big Eva does not think in categories. They do not. They basically believe that, hey, we can be good neighbors by importing the third world and becoming the third world.
I don't know if you saw the argument against Ordo Amoris, where it's just like, well, Jesus says you're supposed to hate your father and your mother. And really what Jesus is talking about is I mean, it's still ordered loves, is that you're supposed to love God first. But when he says hate, that's an ordinal term. That's not a hate in the true sense of I hate you. That's a hate in the sense of I love you less than God. So it is a reference to order, not a reference to outright hating someone. That compared to God, that when it says hate, it means I love you less, to love less than.
Uh, Romans 8 Shaman says we're being extremely charitable on Shenvi. It's like there's really nothing there. Like he's not he's the thing about these math people or these STEM guys. I worked in IT, but I'm not a STEM person. I'm not. Um, so the thing about them is they think everything's like an equation, a formula, and they don't recognize that that's not exactly how things work. So James Lindsay is also like this because he's a math guy, and that's why his commentary and his perception of reality is so terrible and trash. That and he's another one of these people with porn brain, which I'm going to say Joel Berry's on that list as well because the articles that Babylon B be putting out are they need to go to horny jail over there. So Neil Shenvi's his function in life is controlled opposition. So a lot of the people that we're talking about are woke. Neil Shenvi I would include on the list of being woke because do you know how much this guy talks about race?
Probably
Just in general,
like every tweet because he's counter signaling the right.
Yeah, and that's really what he's obsessed with. If you're this obsessed with race, I think you have a problem. If you're just saying, hey, white people, you need to stop hating yourself, I don't think that's being obsessed with race. So let's move on. I got another thing. Let's kind of move on to the next story I wanted to talk about, which is Trump's. This is a major battle going on. Trump administration stops funding to world relief. This is featured in the thumbnail of this live stream. So this is one of the things that has got a Big Eva. Their panties are very twisted right now because of this action. So, and I can't believe this article outperformed the Steve Lawson article, but just goes to show you should get on Gab because that is a very good social media platform in general. So this is huge because Trump has tightened the screws on NGOs who are basically they're profiting off of this.
Yeah, NGOs are largely responsible for perpetuating the mass migration. I mean, you see it on both sides of the border, so within the country and like in the pipeline leading into the country. So, and we've actually covered this in the last year where we talked about what Send Relief does, like along the border, and then we also talked about how, at the time Samaritan's Purse was partnered with a UN refugee initiative, which basically is those are the organizations that give the funny money on the credit card or the debit cards to the migrants as they pass through the entire country of Mexico.
So Trump's decision to cut off funding for these NGOs that are fueling the invasion of our country has caught a lot of ire from evangelicals in general or even Big Eva in general, not all evangelicals. I think most evangelicals, this is what we voted for, actually. We voted to cut off this funding at 80% margins. This is what we voted for. But nonetheless, World Relief put out a statement, and they got a lot of signatures. Let's try to break down and expose some of these signatures here because we do a lot of exposing here on the evangelical dark web. Dr. Walter Kim, president of the National Association of Evangelicals, which is a very liberal organization, by the way, which a lot of charismatics are a part of that. I mean, I think Walter Kim is PCA, but charismatics love the NAE for some stupid reason. It makes no sense.
Keep in mind, you're going to see like people saying that there's a Lifeway study that says that evangelicals want refugees and secure borders, but that was a sponsored study. And I think the NAE was a part of that, or maybe it was the Evangelical Immigration Table,
which is Soros backed, or at least was.
If you see people like that, if you see people going around saying evangelicals wanted it, Lifeway proved it, that was a salted study.
Hulda Fahmy, communications associate at the Jubilee campaign. So you're saying that's a liberal Christian NGO?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look too much into that one, but it was just clear on the surface.
Ryan Brown, president CEO of Open Doors, which is an advocacy group for Christian persecution.
I know. I feel like I've heard of them before. They're kind of like a voice of the martyrs.
Okay. Daniel Degner, president of Wisconsin Family Council, and you noted that they're like a counterpart to Family Research
Yeah,
Council.
they kind of seem like they're a family research council. Like, they're the local version in Wisconsin, and obviously they're trying to like gear up for. They got, I guess, a Supreme Court election coming up in the spring. So again, this is your Christian advocacy group on the ground on a state level, and they suck.
David Namo, executive director and CEO of the Christian Legal Society.
Yeah, I didn't research this one too much, other than like they're based out of Virginia. They're probably very normie or liberal and moderate, squishy kind of. Like I'm assuming they're probably not Liberty Counsel or Alliance Defending Freedom in terms of Christian legal groups.
Mark Tooley, president of the Institution of Religion and Democracy, and also writes for Juicy Ecumenism.
Maybe it's ecumenicism. I might not have spell checked that one, but that
he
guy's
is
a character.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I feel like I've seen him in Christianity Today, or Compromise Today, as we like to call it. Raymond Chang, unworthy of the name Raymond, if you ask me. President of the Asian American Christian Collaborative, liberal personality. We've talked about him a lot. He was an Evangelical for Harris kind of guy. Also at Christianity Today is what you mentioned. And just overall coal poster in general. Katie Frug, executive director, Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission. I don't know if you had anything on this one.
What I said with this one is they're affiliated with the Texas Baptist Cooperative Program. So that's the General Baptist Convention of Texas, or formerly called that. They're like the moderate Baptist. So if you're in Texas, there's like the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, which is the Progressive Baptist, and then you have them. They're the moderates, and then the Southern Baptist Convention is like the conservatives. So
yeah, if only.
That's your Texas Baptist layout from like 1,000 feet view.
Caitlin Scheiss, writer and podcast, Holy Post, which we'll have a clip from in a second. David Hogue, president, Council of Christian Colleges and Universities. Now, this is a very liberal organization. You point out that they're a part of the Chan Zuckerberg initiative to promote the COVID vaccine in churches, as in have churches be administrative sites, which Daniel Darling and Russell Moore were a part of.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
for that.
A lot more I could have done that, but this was like 11 o'clock at night, and
I think they also have a large amount of colleges and universities in their database take money or give money to Planned Parenthood and stuff like that. So, like, these aren't even like pro-life colleges. And then we got Angela Pacey, director, PCA mission to North America. So, PCA organization. And you say that she should be fired for using her title to promote mass immigration. And that was resoundingly rejected when the PCA withdrew from the NEA.
Yeah, I mean, and just to like add to it, she works with the refugees. I presume this is in Georgia, where she works with a lot of the Afghan refugees that are being resettled in America.
Which apparently Send Relief was funding that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad we are keeping our powder dry for when North Carolina got hit with a hurricane, or California with fires.
And again, there were other people on this list I did not quite include. There was someone from like what's called Fellowship Southwest, which that's Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. So that's Texas. They're on the ground sponsoring the invasion efforts. Obviously, there were a lot of church pastors on there, that with some of them mega churches. One that looks like a couple Southern Baptist Convention churches. But obviously, joining them all is Brent Leatherwood, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission.
Yes. And so the Southern Baptist Convention, they are paying for this. They are paying for this guy to represent them. And he is a flaming liberal. So in him, I mean, he's just an evil guy. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts around it. He's not pro-life. He's not competent.
I mean, he fought against the release of the Nashville Tranifesto.
Yeah. So, and one of his priorities is amnesty. This guy is pushing amnesty hardcore. I'm surprised that more people in the whatchamacall, the Southern Baptist Convention, or not the Southern Baptist. Either way, I'm surprised more people don't call it out, because most of Christian media wants amnesty.
And keep in mind, I mean,
definitely support evangelical dark web. We don't support amnesty here for illegals and invaders and stuff like that.
Now I'm hoping this can renew the fight to like get him fired from the ERLC, because he did, he technically did, and then unfired. They unfired him. So maybe this will give the final impetus to, that might move the 1 or 2 votes they need to terminate him.
So I got this clip. This is was it Matt Martens from World Relief, and World Relief. The thing is, they're trying to use this as a fundraising scheme, even though I'm pretty sure they can't use private funds for this mission either. Like, they can't use the refugee resettlement funds. They can't just raise their own funds for the refugee resettlement.
I'm not quite sure how much.
Like, the whole program is halted.
I'm not even sure how much money they've received from this, or they're just, so they might actually just.
No, what I'm saying is they're using the executive order as pretext for fundraising, but they can't fundraise towards the task that the executive order halted.
And I'm not even sure how much money they even received for this program, because I looked at a lot of their money. Most of the money that they receive from the federal government is from USAID, so that's foreign aid. The country codes that they receive it from. Let me see if I can find it, but yeah, they're not exactly receiving money for United States efforts. They're receiving their money from the USDA, which is agriculture for foreign agricultural services. So that's helping farmland overseas. That's 82% of the money that they receive goes towards that. And the other is USAID, which it looks like it's coded for international disaster assistance. And if you're looking at the countries, it's 82%. I'm assuming that's Tanzania.
TNZ.
So, TZA. I don't know the country codes off the top of my head with regards to the government, but that's
it gets very confusing when you got Belgium and Belarus and stuff like that.
But yeah, so again, a lot of the money that they seem to be getting from the federal government actually goes towards is actually overseas. So I don't know how much money they are actually getting towards refugees and immigration.
Now, you know who some of the biggest players in this were? Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society.
Yes, they've received $100 million for refugee stuff, and that's probably both sides of the border.
Yeah,
or maybe mostly south of the border.
That's $100 million, which is probably more than World Relief is touching on this cumulatively. So just got to say, as Doug Wilson points out, high-performing people, and Ben Shapiro supports that organization. Just saying.
Allegedly, but yes.
No, I'm pretty sure
Benjamin Shapiro.
No, I'm pretty sure like in a few years ago, he was a massive donor to them. So I remember that story. I never wrote about it, but I remember almost writing about it because it is a thing. So this is him. This is the guy from World Relief going on the Holy Compost. This is from earlier today. You said the 7:45-minute mark is where I want to start.
Yeah, I mean, and essentially just to kind of give you some of the context, he's trying to make the steelman argument for why we should keep the refugee program, that it's there's 3 distinct categories. There's refugee, there's asylumees, and then there's just the illegal immigrants. And he's trying to say that, we need to keep the refugee program around. And then you're going to have the Sky dude. I forget what his name or last name is.
Sky Jetheni.
He's going to try to say, it's cruel and Trump's being cruel. And, he's trying to like collapse the immigration system. So just kind of give you the context. But again, I mean, I'll bring the evidence against the refugee program once he finishes.
People knew that they were going to get no assistance. They may not have chosen to come, but they came because the government promised to help them.
Right.
What explanation have you heard as to why they decided on this policy?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biblical principle here is let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. And our government said yes to a very relative small number of refugees around the world. And World Relief said yes, presuming that we would be able to bring together our private resources with these governmental resources to serve these families well. And we have a really good track record of serving people really well. I mean, the interesting thing is the rationale for this, at least I should say the rationale for shutting down refugee resettlement overall in the first executive order cites these communities in places like Springfield, Ohio, or Whitewater, Wisconsin, or even in Chicago, where a lot of asylum seekers from the border have arrived, and cites some real challenges with a large number of people showing up and not having adequate support to integrate into a community. But the irony of that is none of those people came as refugees.
Right.
We did do our very best we could in Chicago, working with churches to care for asylum seekers, but we didn't have the resources to provide the very robust integration support and housing assistance that we can provide for a refugee, because the refugee resettlement system actually works really well. It is a model of how to help immigrants integrate into a community and become economically self-sufficient and net contributors in a fairly short period of time, because they get that relatively small amount of assistance up front. So to me, the rationales that I have heard, and then beyond that, why to look backwards, we've had very little communication with the US government on this. We've, of course, sought that and continue to seek that, and would love for them to tell us we misunderstood what is a fairly clear order to stop work immediately as of last Friday afternoon. But honestly, I'm concerned that we will actually see challenging situations of people not able to integrate nearly as well if we're not able to support them. And my hope is actually that if that was the goal, to show how this system doesn't work by pulling away the fundings very abruptly, that the church steps up in a really profound way so we can continue to serve people who have already been resettled and keep our commitment to them. And we've already started to see that, and we're thankful for that.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a few minutes.
So your thoughts?
So, I mean, again, he's actually saying because we actually give them a bunch of money, that way they can assimilate, which, again, I would reject the notion that they assimilate or that they don't require further assistance, because, you're looking at food stamps, the fact that, I think it's like 60% of immigrants
So is he
are
trying to say that
dependent
the
on welfare
Haitians
of some sorts.
was he trying to say that the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, were not?
So they would be, I guess,
not
asylum.
processed as refugees.
They would be, I guess, asylees. So there is like a distinct. There might be like, I guess there's three distinct categories and three distinct programs, but
I'm pretty sure they were given refugee status.
oh,
Like they were illegal. They invaded this country, but instead of treating them as illegal immigrants, they gave them refugee status.
I think the distinction is they have a court date that's supposed to determine their asylum status, but versus the refugees that actually are recognized as refugees. But I mean, but even if we take him at his word, let's just go to Clarkston, Georgia, which is called the Ellis Island of the South, and that's like the city, like a very small town municipality that's in the Atlanta suburb area that is now 70% foreign born. And this is like a north of Atlanta suburb, like a former train community. It's in DeKalb County, which is, when you talk about like the Battle of Atlanta, that was fought in that county. So, I mean, you basically took a community that's already kind of like high crime, probably a little bit more impoverished, and you basically turned an entire town in that community to majority foreign born. And you're trying to say, oh, it's not that many people. It's not, it's not, bad for the community. It doesn't, the people assimilate, which again, they don't, because I mean, Germany just learned a lesson of a Saudi doctor, you would think highly educated guy immigrated to Germany and then commits terrorism. Or you have the,
well, America, we had New Year's Day kick off with some violent events.
Yes. And again, one of them being a foreigner. So the notion that they immigrate, or that, it's only 30,000 people, which again, you put 20,000 people, or
you put them all in one place.
Yeah, you put like 2,000 people in a community of like 50,000. That's going to cause problems. And again, the people did not vote for that. And he's trying to say,
where's the promise?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
the promise that people who did not have authority to make a promise made,
or they made a promise against the will of the people that vote for them. Because again, the people of Springfield did not vote for a bunch of Haitians being dumped onto their lawn. I don't know if the people of Georgia got a say in whether,
and certainly the
Georgia
cats and dogs didn't. But
did the people of Georgia have a say in whether Clarkston would be turned into a immigrant dumping ground for all the a lot of those Afghan refugees, or what about the people of Michigan? Did they want Dearbornistan to exist? Did the people of Minnesota want a bunch of Somalis being dumped there?
Yeah. And that's so much so that their flag is now closer to the Somali flag. I mean, any state that's making a flag just needs to stop. Like, scrap the efforts of making a flag. Just stop it now, because no one knows how to design flags anymore. But you're absolutely right. They just dump them all in one place, and they basically keep them in their own ghetto kind of community. This is like you said, this is where the Somalis go. This is where the Afghans go. This is where the Haitians go. So that doesn't help with assimilation at all, like he's claiming. And those people were also getting enough assistance that they could outcompete Americans in
Yeah, I mean, and again, he's
housing and other stuff.
and he's just like, oh, they're self-sufficient because we helped them out in the beginning, which again, I would dispute, because they might be self-sufficient on the program, but are they not being given other programs? Are they not also taking advantage of public education, which again, that's taxpayer money?
There's a lot of things that don't make it self-sufficient, but at the end of the day, the thing about a republic is, or if you want to actually say that America is a democracy, because functionally we've removed all the vestiges of the republic we once were, you can't make a deal. You can't make deals with that. You can't make promises in our system of government, because it just changes with the next administration. And now Trump's in charge, so the promises of the Biden administration are gone. They're null and void now because a new regime is in charge. So that is the nature of the American government, which is one reason why we were warned against foreign entanglements, or at least one common sense reason why we should not be in foreign entanglements. So that is the World Relief people. They are very mad, and Big Eva is rallying to their cause. And I think they're exposing themselves in the middle of this. I
Well,
think.
he did expose himself in the middle. He was talking about how he was helping all the asylum guys, the asylees in Chicago.
Okay.
So he said that in the middle of that clip. He's just like, yeah, we were helping a lot of the people in Chicago. We tried to helping them. I guess it's not as easy as helping out the refugees, the Afghan refugees.
But if the goal is to get the church to fleece up the money that the government's not going to do, which, first of all, you don't have the authority to continue that program against the executive order. I'm pretty sure you can't do that. They basically said as much in their statement that they can't do that.
Well, it's literally what the word stop order.
Yeah.
It's
So
what a stop order is.
I believe it's the Martins, or it's one of the female over at World Relief said that you could not do that, or we cannot actually use the funds that we're raising to this purpose. So they're just using it as a money grab in the meantime, but they're rallying the troops of Big Eva to this cause. And this is a very nice instance where tribalism works in our favor. So we can convince the average evangelical, are you going to stick with Trump, or are you going to go with Brent Leatherwood? That is a very easy choice for 80% of evangelicals to make. Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing was not whether to vote for Trump or Kamala Harris, but whether to vote for Trump at all was the biggest divide. But even the people that were never going to vote for Trump at all, are they going to choose Brent Leatherwood over Donald Trump in this fight? Are they going to choose Walter Kim in this fight? So this is I'm actually really excited that this fight is happening, because we are in the plebes, I'm not a medieval figure at all. And I'm getting like Trump to airstrike these Big Eva baddies for us, or for me and for the cause.
Yeah, I mean,
this is wonderful development to me.
Like, their tactics aren't working, and that's kind of
we signed a strongly worded letter. Well, guess what? We're still winning.
Yeah, I mean, and again, even if the order gets revised, revoked, and certain things happen to it, at the end of the day, the fact that the Trump administration is going after the NGOs is a big deal. because that's part of stopping the immigration is stopping the money. You know?
Yes, and so much of liberalism is subsidized by the government. People don't realize that. People like there's a lot of no call, no show jobs for liberals in the federal government, which is why Trump wants to get all these people to show up in the office. It's one reason, because there's a lot of no show jobs. But even at a local level, so here's a story. In where I live, they were trying to get pride flags inside of public school classrooms, and these were donated to the schools. But lo and behold, who gave the organization money to donate these flags to schools? Well, it came from the government. I believe it also came from the local government, because this money was being mismanaged, and it went to an organization with that wanted to groom kids with pride flags. And that's just a local example. There's a ton of this. It's kind of like when the NIH, I think it's them, or it's the Center for CDC, Center for Disease Control. They were banned from studying any issues related to guns because all they would do is promote gun control. They were just liberals being subsidized. That is why they were legally banned from doing that. And that was a liberal talking point from a few years ago. But there is so much of liberalism that is government funded. And Trump is actually starting to tackle that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I don't know whether even the normie con or like the average person understands just how much NGOs are involved in the invasion of the southern
and
border.
I don't think how many of you all, or maybe you guys do because you're a well-informed audience, but how many Christians know that these supposedly Christian organizations are backed by dark money? The Christianity Today, like, they're not reader supported. They get grants of $5 million from liberal organizations. They are not reader backed. They get grants. These organizations get grants. The Gospel Coalition has a lot of rich donors and stuff like that. The Preston Sprinkles Center for Faith and Sexuality gets a lot of grants from some rich organizations.
Well, didn't the ERLC also take outside money?
They've taken some outside money as well. So there's a lot of this going on in evangelicalism. And our problem, and it's one of my life goals to be a part of the solution to this problem, is we don't have enough money. The good guys are underfunded. And it's not me asking for you guys to sign up for Evangelical Dark Web's patron-like system, although you should definitely do that. But I'm just generally raising the issue that our side is underfunded. If you look at elections, Democrats spend more than Republicans. If you look at evangelical audiences, and our podcasts make the most difference, but it's not like, I don't know who exactly has the largest audiences. Like, the Gospel Coalition is a behemoth. They are a top 50 website in faith and spirituality in the United States. They are top 50. The only thing larger than them is the only thing that's not a Bible app that's larger than them is Desiring God, which is John Piper's organization, and Got Questions. Those are the only things larger than the Gospel Coalition that I know of. Because I don't know the full top 50 list, but I believe Jehovah's Witnesses is number one. Like, they are the number one in that category because they have like their official Bible on their website. So their website becomes number one, and like LDS is number 2 or 3 or something like that. So very difficult category, and the Gospel Coalition is a behemoth. So one thing that's true is people, and this is the whole woke wars 2 thing of people who should be allies aren't allies because some people want to go woke for Jews after not going woke for black people and stuff like that.
It goes back to Ordo Amoris. They don't like the idea of white people potentially collectivizing.
But there's also the sense that people want to infight because they don't want to support their own. And that's a problem on the right.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to purity spiral. It's easier to black pill and doom, or Trump is this, so he can't, you can't enjoy the good things or support them for the good things. Even Elon Musk, you can't, everything Elon's bad, even though you can work with him to an extent and understand that there are lines in the sand.
Now, why was James Lindsay promoted in the church? Oh, because we didn't want to promote actual Christians that were against wokeness.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why.
Yeah, that's basically the using a leftist former leftist to attack the left.
They did not want to elevate someone like a John Harris.
Oh, that's the was it Doug Wilson that brought up the 1, 2, 3, and 4 that King's Hall used, and they don't want the 4s. They don't want to use the 4s to attack the left. They want to use like the 1s and the 2s to attack the left, and then the people that are the 3s want to become the 2s and the 1s. So yeah,
and he's a 3, isn't he?
Yeah.
Or he's a 3 moving to a 2.
So again, the right doesn't want to embrace its radicals, and that's again, if the right wants to succeed, they have to embrace the radicals. They at least let the dogs loose.
Yeah, and Trump is letting the dogs loose. I mean, look at Tom Homan or Hammond. Like he's going to be a dog for this administration, and I am excited about that because let's be real, Kristi Noem is probably going to be incompetent at DHS. But
I mean, I think
Tom Hammond's going to be doing the job.
I think she'll handle the administrative part well, but
3 hours a day doing makeup and hair for her photo shoots.
Yeah, I imagine
that are going to look terrible because she's had too much work done on her face.
Well, I imagine she'll handle some of the administrative part, but yeah, if Homan is setting the agenda and all her job is to just, oh, he wrote this proposal, okay, I'll implement it. You're just a literal secretary to the CEO, then yeah, she'll be fine for that job. If she's just an order taker, she'll be fine. And that's why I think she's chosen. She'll do what she's told.
So do what you told me to, drill sergeant. It's basically, yes. That is what I think that to a large extent is what Trump needs. Just a bunch of Forrest Gumps in there. And then underneath those Forrest Gumps are your actual dogs. And so that's kind of most of what I got for tonight. We can do some questions. I'll do a last call for questions, but yeah, ending point, people on the right don't want to promote their own. And again, people like John Harris should have a way larger platform. People like Joel Webbin, I don't know how he got as large of a platform as quick as he did. Like in the last 2 years, the dude's just skyrocketed. And that to me is great, but people don't like that. And JD Hall said something about this because I read his Substack or at least his tweets. He basically talked about how there's like the 5 families in evangelicalism, or he used a Game of Thrones analogy, I think, as well. But he basically talked about the only thing that they basically will respect each other, but they will go after anyone who rises to upset the balance of power. That is who gets cracked down on. And he's specifically talking about like reformed evangelicalism. They crack down on anyone who's rising in market share. Wow. Joel Webbin spends so much time on got a platform because of how much time he spends on his hair. I hope there's no truth to that, but maybe I'll ask him. So anyway, I'm not seeing any questions pop in. Oh, here's a question. It's coming in. Robert Prevost asks, question, why are they gay? I know why, but can't think of anything else.
This goes back to the beautiful loser point that Sam Francis coined the term, I believe. And a lot of these people, especially again, not to drag on boomers, though it does apply a lot to Gen X as well. They don't know how to win because they've never actually won before. And Trump is really the first time we've seen victories sustained victories on a cultural front. I mean, Reagan had a few, but Reagan ultimately did make the culture worse with regards to immigration, with regards to race, and MLK, making MLK a national figure. And again, a lot of other of those cultural impacts that Reagan did is bad Supreme Court justice with Senator David O'Connor. So on the cultural front, the right has never seen victories before. It's always been just progressively losing to the left, or the Republican Party has always been controlled opposition. So part of what makes a lot of these guys gay is they don't know how to win.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think, like, I watch a lot of history videos, and Napoleon has definitely been one of the things I've been watching a lot about lately. And it's like he was 24 years old when he was given a significant command, and he was 26 years old when he was like a general fighting in the Italian war campaign. Like 26 years old, and he's going against like a 70-year-old Austrian general, and he's winning.
And keep in mind, it's not like, Napoleon, or like, you're losing to the best, or it's like, look at the people that a lot of these people were losing to. It's just like, literally gay. So I mean, it's not just that they've been losing their entire life. It's just like, wow, look at the class of people they were losing to.
Yeah, because let's be real, it's not like these are very skilled debaters. What we learned, because this is another theme that's been going on. I think 80 Robles did a video on this today. I have not watched it yet because I didn't get to watch anything today. But we're in a post-debate culture, and I've been saying this for a while. Like 2020 should have made it clear that it didn't matter how much evidence you showed people in 2020. They were Branch Covidians. They had a religious devotion to the masks, to the mandates, the vaccines, and the lockdowns. They had a religious devotion to that, and you could not break that with logic and reason and facts. So it really didn't matter. And it's one of the things I write about in Winning Not Winsome. I said one of the mistakes that we make is only using logic in debates. It's one of the things that I talk about, I think, at the very end. We also have to use emotion as well, or passion, I think is what I say.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the whole facts don't care about your feelings is just wrong. Because at the end of the day, people live by narrative. They live by, a lot of it's part of a story. Even, Christianity is a story as much as it is facts and historicity. It's also a story. It's how God relates to you. It's how you relate to God. It's what your purpose is
and God's the hero of the story. Contrary to dispensational belief.
Westminster, Catechism question 1, what is the purpose of man? The chief end of man is to glorify God.
So I think that's all I got for today. My name is Rez, the Evangelical Dark Web. Sign up for the free newsletter. It's free. I'm trying to push it more. You get more articles because there's more articles and videos, and it's just a daily newsletter of the articles that we're writing. And over to Evangelical Dark Web. Have a blessed day. Stay based. Christ is King, and we will